Hello and welcome to our software tutorial series. In this tutorial, we will go over how to enter information from Form W-2 in the tax software. After completing this lesson, you should be able to enter taxable scholarship income in the tax software, link to Form W-2, enter foreign address on Form W-2, enter Social Security and Medicare wages when different from federal wages, describe and enter information in the Form W-2 boxes, and enter non-taxable combat pay that can be treated as earned income. Wages and salaries are payments received by an employee in exchange for performing services for an employer. Each employee should receive Form W-2 wage and tax statement from his or her employer showing wages received for services. Include your wages on line 1 of Form 1040-EZ or line 7 of Form 1040-A or 1040, even if a Form W-2 was not received. In this example, the taxpayer did not receive a Form W-2 for taxable scholarship income that he received. The income should be included on line 1 of Form 1040-EZ. Scholarship income that is not reported on Form W-2 is entered on 1040 Worksheet 1. Select 1040 Worksheet 1 from the Forms tree on the left side of the screen. Enter the income amount at the top of the form on the Scholarship Income No W-2 line. Go back to Form 1040-EZ. The income amount entered will calculate to Form 1040-EZ line 1. These steps should also be followed if the taxpayer received household employee income and did not receive a Form W-2. That income should also be entered on 1040 Worksheet 1 in the Household Employee Income No W-2 line. On the Form 1040-EZ line 1, use the F9 function key to link to Form W-2 Wage and Tax Statement. This will open a new blank Form W-2. When entering Form W-2 information in the tax software, it is important to enter all of the information exactly as it is on the Form W-2 that was received from the employer. If this information is entered differently, it can cause a rejection or delay of a refund for the taxpayer. At the top of the form, select either the taxpayer or spouse checkbox to show who earned the income from this Form W-2. The tax software will default the ownership to the taxpayer. However, it is advisable to always select one of these checkboxes. This will help you to remember that it should be done. The next section of the W-2 is for the preparer only. Each of these checkboxes should be selected only if it applies to the particular form that the taxpayer received. If the taxpayer's address is the same as the one shown on the W-2, select the Check if this is the taxpayer's address shown on the W-2 checkbox. Otherwise, select the Check and Make Changes checkbox and enter the taxpayer's address as shown on the W-2 that he or she received from the employer. The second line of this address, this line is used only for a foreign address, should never be used unless the taxpayer's address is not a United States address. If it is used in error, the tax return will be rejected by the IRS. The checkbox, Check if employer was contacted to verify W-2, will not be selected by an IRS site. This checkbox is only used if the taxpayer will be applying for a bank product. The next two checkboxes, Check to take calculations off of lines 3, 4, 5, and 6, and Check to take calculations off of line 16, state wages, should be used if the taxpayer's Social Security and Medicare wages or state wages differ from the amounts shown on Form W-2. These checkboxes will remove the calculations from those entries to allow manual input of the information. Boxes B and C of the W-2 are used for the employer's information. Enter this information exactly as it appears on the Form W-2 that the taxpayer received. If this employer has been entered previously in the tax software, entering the employer ID will allow the software to populate the employer's name and address automatically. This allows you to save keystrokes when entering Form W-2 information. The employee's Social Security number and name will calculate based on whether you selected taxpayer or spouse at the top of the form. The address will be populated to show the address listed on the main information sheet unless you made changes to the address at the top of this form. Enter the information in boxes 1 through 11 exactly as it appears on the Form W-2 that the taxpayer received. Boxes 3 through 6 will calculate based on the amount of wages in Box 1. Unless you have selected the checkbox, check to take calculations off of lines 3, 4, 5, and 6 near the top of the form. Box 1 will be the amount entered on Form 1040EZ Line 1 or Form 1040A or 1040 Line 7. The amount of Box 2 will be entered on the tax withheld line of the 1040EZ, 1040A, or 1040, whichever applies to this return. Any other amounts entered in these boxes will be carried to the appropriate sections of the return. For example, amounts on line 10, Dependent Care Benefits, will carry to Form 2441, Credit for Child and Dependent Care Expenses, page 2. In Box 12, enter the code and amount exactly as it appears on the Form W-2 that the taxpayer received. Do not use the 2-digit year format unless there is a year code such as 05 on the W-2. This code is only used for military taxpayers. Entering this information when it is not appropriate can cause a state rejection if the state return is electronically filed. The information from Box 12 will be carried to the appropriate entry of the tax return. For example, if code D is entered with an amount, the information will be carried to Form 8880, Credit for Qualified Retirement Savings Contributions, if the taxpayer is eligible for the Retirement Savings Contribution credit. For an explanation of these codes, press F1 for help. Information in Box 14 generally does not make any changes to the tax return. If an amount on this entry qualifies for the Retirement Savings Contribution credit, select Qualifies for Form 8880 checkbox, and the tax software will carry the amount to that form. Enter any other information on this form exactly as it appears on the Form W-2 that the taxpayer received. In certain cases, an exact code must be entered in the local name on Box 20. The codes that should be used for this entry can be found in the tax software help by pressing F1. If the taxpayer has non-taxable combat pay that may be eligible for treatment as earned income for purposes of the Earned Income Credit, that amount will calculate to the non-taxable combat pay entry near the bottom of the form. This income will be denoted by a code Q in Box 12. The tax software will automatically determine whether the taxpayer benefits from this treatment on Schedule EIC, Earned Income Credit. The state exclusion information near the bottom of the screen should be selected only after checking the tax software help for the state. Some states use these checkboxes and others do not. For example, the taxpayer received a Form W-2 from his employer. From Form 1040EZ, page 1, line 1, link or F9 to Form W-2. At the top of this form, select the taxpayer checkbox. The address in the W-2 is the same as the address that the taxpayer gave, so select the checkbox Check if this is the taxpayer's address shown on the W-2 checkbox. The taxpayer's Social Security, Medicare, and state wages are the same as those shown on Box 1. Do not select any other checkboxes in this section. In Box B, enter the employer's EIN number as shown on the taxpayer's W-2. In Box C, enter the employer's name. Notice that the name code above this entry will auto-calculate the name code. Enter the employer's address. Once the zip code is entered, this will make the city and state calculate automatically. Next, enter the taxpayer's wages on Box 1. The tax software will round the cents to the nearest dollar. Enter the federal income tax withheld in Box 2. Boxes 3 through 6 will calculate based on the amount of wages in Box 1. Press F10 to go back to Form 1040EZ, Line 1. The amount of wages have calculated to this entry. The amount of federal tax withheld has calculated to Line 7. In this tutorial, we have gone over how to enter taxable scholarship income in the tax software, link to Form W-2, enter Social Security and Medicare wages when different from federal wages, and describe and enter information on Form W-2 boxes, and enter non-taxable combat pay that can be treated as earned income. Thank you for viewing this tutorial.